So I'm about 20 books behind in my reviews now, so I'm just gonna have to I don't know, power through them or something. Today we're doing Mira Grant's Newsflesh trilogy, starting with her first book, Feed. Here we are. So even though I'm a sucker for zombie fiction, and I had known of the existence of this book for a long time, I kept putting off reading it for some reason, and I wish I hadn't, but I'm glad I'm reading it now. Anyway, this book is set in 2034, 20 years after two cures, the common cold and cancer respectively, have been found and combined in the human body, with the result of turning everyone into zombies, either upon infection or later when they die. It follows two adoptive sibling bloggers, Sean and Georgia Mason, as they cover a major presidential election and subsequently uncover a major conspiracy. It's more political stuff than day-to-day action for a zombie book, I thought. There's a lot of setup regarding how society now functions in a post-zombie world and the role of social media as a major news source. I found it interesting how an earned lack of trust in news outlets turned people to social media as their main source of reliable information. Seen as an amplification or a potential final outcome of our current situation, I thought it was something really worth pondering. Onto the more negative aspects of the book, there is so much repetition. Grant uses the same phrases and phrasings over and over in this book, which I think is strange considering that Sean and Georgia are supposed to be really intelligent bloggers and popular, who should know better than to bore the pants off of their viewers. I don't actually know where bore the pants off of them comes from, and I feel like I should look into that in the future. Anyways, but yeah, the point being, they should know how to entertain people properly, and since the story is told in first-person view of Georgia Mason, I was really kind of confused as to why the phrasings weren't a little more creative and interesting. Just something to think about. Also, the zombies themselves take a definite backseat to the political and social issues going on, which is sort of disappointing. And finally, it was really hard to like the characters. I don't have to love characters, but I'd really rather not want to punch their faces in. Sean and Georgia were just so unsympathetic. They had so few emotional outlets, and it was hard to connect with them. I really preferred the background cast a lot more than I did the two main characters, and there was very little fleshing out of the background characters, so it was pretty disappointing. Still, there was a lot of society building going on that helped to make the book a little more intriguing and helped make up for the lack of that zombie action, despite the fact that it's a zombie apocalypse book. A Girl's Got Expectations. But overall, I guess I didn't mind that there was very little zombie smashing to be had, because I was really interested in the social commentary that was going on in the book, even though it wasn't the most cleverly done thing I've ever seen. Okay, next is Deadline, book number 2 in the Newsflesh trilogy. So this one picks up about 1 or 2 years after the final events of Feed, when supposedly dead CDC researcher Kelly Connolly turns up on Sean's doorstep. He discovers that the conspiracy he thought he put an end to, and Feed, is actually still alive and thriving. The good thing about this book is that there was a little bit more excitement going on, I thought, in action sequences or various things like that. Unfortunately, that's about all the good I have to say of this book. The narrator for book number 2 is Sean Mason, and I didn't like him in Feed when he was just the second main character, and I really don't like him now. He is so stuck on himself and uncaring of the consequences of his actions on people he loves, or is supposed to love, I guess. Sean has anger issues and violence issues, and I don't care what the reasoning is, you do not threaten violence or actually punch any of your employees, whether or not they're friends. And somehow he lacks any planning skills, like any intelligent planning skills. He just runs in and does stuff, which I guess sort of fits in with his character from the first book, but really. In addition, the plot advances are really contrived, and it took a lot for me to be okay with what was happening or justify the actions. Also, if I have to hear again how Sean wants a coffee but has to have a Coke instead, I might scream a little bit. Like, is Coke sponsoring the book? Because I know that it was supposed to have a sort of emotional impact, but if you're going to hit me over the head with something repeatedly, I'm just going to go numb. Overall, when I gave up trying to justify everything to myself, it was an entertaining enough read. Mira Grant does write some pretty decent action scenes whenever she gets around to it, but I don't ever want to read it again. Also, I want more actual zombies and less just talking about them. And last, and probably least, Blackout, number 3 in the Newsflesh trilogy. Blackout is sort of a book where they just tie up loose ends, and that's pretty much it. The plot just goes nuts. Nothing makes any sense. It was really tough to follow. The good news is there was a lot more action, and in that sense it was more fun, but even so, there was still a lot of teasing with things that should have been shown and weren't, but what can you do? Honestly, despite the repetition, Grant has a writing style that makes you want to keep reading, which is nice. Despite the fact that there is way too much repetition, there is too much assuming that your readers cannot put 2 and 2 together on their own, and too much telling and not enough showing. Mostly, I'm just glad it's over. I enjoyed reading them. It's not that they were the most horrible things I've ever read. They were just a little more disappointing. I was expecting more action and better storytelling, considering all of the really good reviews that it gets. But it's an entertaining read if you're looking for something that will make you think a little bit, a very little bit, and you like zombies. It can have some really fresh takes on it, so, give it a try, but read at your own risk.